The generators and the manifesting generators are really here to know thyself. Projectors are here to know and see others. Manifestors, they're our initiators and our fire starters. When they see it, they can make it happen.
Like, this feels so good to do things that feel so good, you know? That was such a huge unlock for me. Just the one thing from human design.
The early parts of our parenthood journey, I couldn't understand why I just couldn't keep up. I felt like a failure. I felt like a terrible mom, that I needed more space, and that made me feel a lot of shame.
That's how I started down the path of the feminine, masculine, and polarity. Now I have mermaids everywhere. Maggie, I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here.
Okay, we're going to talk about all kinds of things. So let's start with what human design is.
Yeah.
What's human design?
The way I like to describe it is that it's a self-awareness tool. Self-awareness tool or self-awareness system that helps you better understand yourself, how your energy moves, how you make decisions, how you learn, how you interact with other people. And so if I'm in an elevator with someone, I'm going to say it's like the most detailed personality test you've ever taken, but it's based solely off of your birth information. So it's quite unconventional. And I say that a lot because of the spaces I exist in.
Okay, so that's good high level. Can you pull back and talk about how you discovered human design, what the journey has been for you with this tool?
Yeah. I like to say that I've always had one foot on the ground and one in the clouds. So I did everything I was supposed to do, right? I'm using air quotes. I got the good grades and went to college and got the good job. I started in financial services, and I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to be doing, but there was always this thread pulling me towards practices like mindfulness, meditation, yoga. So I ended up becoming a yoga teacher, and that kind of set me down this path where I lived these parallel lives. And human design, I found it through just being in that world. I found it years and years ago, pulled my chart, and then immediately set it down and didn't look at it again for years, because it's like learning a new language.
Was it overwhelming,
Totally.
or was there something in you that was like, I can't receive this right now?
I think both. I think it wasn't probably the right time for me to dive in, but I was so confused. And at the time I found it, the information wasn't as readily accessible as it is today. You can go on Instagram and deep dive for hours now with really digestible content. So I set it down, and I hit this point in 2018 where I had like kind of my I'll call it my quarter life crisis, my like moment on the floor. I had my first panic attack.
The Saturn return?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
It was probably right around, I was probably right in that midst. Yep.
Yeah.
I was probably right around Saturn return, maybe coming out of it. And I had this moment of, what am I doing? And so as I started to unpack that experience and make some changes in my life, human design came back in. And I had just become a mom. It was right before COVID, and I decided to look my chart up again, and that was it. It was time for me to find that information, and I haven't looked back, and it's been 4.5 years.
Okay, so you are working in the real estate industry.
I am, which is interesting.
So I had a friend. So how we're connected, I had a friend say, you have to meet Maggie. You need to have her read your human design chart. Just trust me. Paige, I'm just gonna name her Paige. She's like a great connector with stuff like this. And so I'm like, well, what's Maggie's deal? She works for a real estate company doing human design readings. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, do they know that this is woo? So we talked a little bit about that before we hit record, but tell me how you're integrating what I would describe it as woo, but also it feels so grounded. I don't know. So anyways, you're incorporating it in a corporate-ish setting.
Yeah.
How is that working?
Yeah, it's working very well. But the path to get there is an interesting one. And so I'd been working for a real estate company on staff, not selling, on and off since like 2016. So I like to preface that because there was a level of trust built up by the time I pitched bringing human design into the fold. So I was deep diving into human design. I got pregnant for the second time with a set of twins. So I took 1.5 years off when they were born just to figure out what the heck was going on with our life with 3 babies. But I was also really deep into my human design study at that point. And I knew if I was going to come back to work that I had to have human design in my life in some way. And so I pitched the idea to the owners of the company that I work for. And I said, let's just try it. This is very unconventional. It is going to ask people to be really open-minded. It is absolutely woo. I mean, so human design works off of your birth information. I think I said that. But there's so much benefit to it. And there is a lot of really tangible, tactical tools that you leave with when you have your chart read. And so I thought, let's just try it.
Okay, wait, I just have to pause you. Because, like, yes, you had a level of trust built. I don't know that this was true for you. If I'm in your shoes, and I think I've kind of been in your shoes in a different way,
Yes.
right? Where as I started to kind of delve into this divine feminine stuff, and I was bringing these sort of concepts or ways of leadership that were more vulnerable, more connected, more playful, more open in a pretty visible position in a corporate setting. It took courage, and I don't mean that as like a shine a light on me, but it's not easy to say, hey, I know this is really unconventional and I see the benefit and I think we need to go there. And like on a macro level, this is so much of what's encouraging to me because I'm like, she's rising, you know?
Ooh, thank you so much for saying that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I do feel like I have often, I have massive people-pleasing tendencies. I have been quite submissive, I would say, in my life, which is a lot of work that I'm unpacking now and have been. But there was something about human design that put me on a bit of a soapbox where I have felt this way really for the last 4.5 years, where it's worth it to me to put myself out there because I know the benefit is so great for whoever needs to receive it.
Where does the knowing come from?
Not from my conscious mind and not from my like ego and not from a place that I could probably describe. It's definitely source, spirit, something deeper within me. Because I really feel like this is absolutely part of my purpose and what I'm here to do. And I deeply care about connecting with other people and helping them see their gifts and their genius. And what I have found through human design is a language that allows me to do that. It gives a language and a tool that has opened that dialogue and has really helped and transformed people's lives. And so I can't not be passionate about it. And that has been really empowering.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. Like I can identify with that, I think. Just this, like, I can't not do this. Yeah. And I don't know that I've felt that in my life this way until now, where I was like, I can't not do this. Yeah. Which is kind of a wild feeling. And it's so cool to just see it in other people, other women that are like, I can't not do this, and what that's birthing. Yeah. So I paused you just to come back to your story of what your experience in the setting has been. So you're like, okay, I'm going to pitch this unconventional thing. They said yes. And then tell me more of what happened with it.
Yeah. So I will say, I'm going to give credit to the owners of the company that I work with because they were open-minded enough to explore this, right? But what we started with was a session for each of them. I said, let me just sit you down. And we did it together because they know each other so well. And I said, if after this session you're not bought in, then we will drop this. But if after this session you think there's something here, or I've touched a nerve, or I have resonated with you in some way, then let's give this a shot. And that's exactly what we did. And the one of them was taking copious notes throughout, and I think I surprised them both.
Yeah,
I think I really surprised them both. And so at that point it was, let's just try it. And I think the numbers spoke for themselves, and the response. And it did, of course, take a little time, right? We had early, like anything, you're going to have early adopters, and you're going to have your skeptics, and then you're going to have those who will never do it. But we have 80% adoption rate at the company now of people who have done at least one session. And we have people of all walks of life, of all belief systems, of all experience levels. We have top producers all the way down to, new to the industry advisors who are taking advantage of it. So it has resonated, I would say, on a wider scale.
Well, and you said you were booked out. You told me how far were you booked out?
Yeah, well, we launched them 2 years ago in like September, I think. And I ended up spending like the first 4 months in session. I think I was doing like 6 to 7 a week, which were hour-long one-on-one sessions. Or if there's a team, they can do a team session. So it was probably at least 7 or so hours out of my day just in session or out of my week, which felt like a lot. And by December, I think most of the company had done at least one session.
So what did you see? Okay, so this is a tool to help people become more aware of themselves, of their challenges, their gifts, how would you describe it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, understanding how your energy is felt and presented to the world. Because this is such an interactive business, this is a people-based business, knowing how people receive you is one thing. Your learning styles, your decision-making styles. I mean, some of us are primed to make split-second, in-the-moment decisions. That's both of us. Other people need time and space. There's clarity that comes over time. And then there are more, other people have to really talk things out and hear themselves speak their truth. And so they need to have spaces where they can do that. I mean, we can get that granular. But then there are others who do really well with strangers. And so big networking groups or, sitting next to somebody at the airport bar and striking up a conversation or sitting next to the person on the plane, that's going to be a great way for you to prospect. Where others, they're really concerned with their intimate network. And so making sure that you're having those coffee dates and those meetings and you're really nurturing that sphere in that way. I mean, I'm really sticking with real estate because that feels so tangible. But we could get as granular as how do you prospect?
Yeah.
And how do you grow your business? And if you hate open houses, well, maybe there's a couple of reasons in the chart why. Maybe there's a limiting belief we can unpack. But maybe that's just not the best approach for you. And we can put that resource
It's just
elsewhere.
so wild. It seems so obvious, but all of the ways that we're wired, the ways that we are, apply to every area of life. And when you can take the knowledge, whether it's woo or it's not, and apply it to your work, obviously that's a really unlocking thing. I think one of the things that I was reflecting on this morning, I had a psychic reading a few days ago. Just so fun. I'm just gonna throw it out there.
Yes, love.
But I think I've been asking myself, why is it that we are so curious about, because I just had another woman, she's in a totally different real estate company. She's well-known nationally. And she just kind of said, hey guys, I've been keeping a secret. I'm clairvoyant and I'm going to coach real estate agents and use this gifting. And I was like, whoa, wow.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so it got me thinking, and she was just booked like that. And similar to your experience, it's a different gift. It's a different tool. And I think it's a similar, people come to it, I think, from a similar place of like help, right? Like, or like a very deep curiosity. And what is that about? What would you say to that?
I think people are seeking meaning and purpose in their lives. And I think, we've been conditioned to this way of living, at least here, in the United States. And if you're lucky enough to have food, shelter, water, and have some sort of a choice in your career, we've been bought into this story that this kind of lifestyle is going to lead to happiness or fulfillment. And I think people are unhappy and unfulfilled. And I can say that from personal experience. As I've been really kind of navigating my life over the last few years and what it means. And I think they're tired of surface level. And I really think people are looking for, meaning, purpose, and a deeper connection.
And can I add joy to that?
Yeah, let's add some fun. Yeah, it doesn't have to be so heavy and in depth.
No, but I think that's so true. I think, so I stumbled into human design. I think it was during COVID. One of my best friends at the time was like, hey, what's your human design? And I'm like, what's human design? Like, I have no idea. And so she, typed in my birth date and my time and whatever. And she was like, okay, you're a generator. And so she read back to me what that means, which you can do a better job explaining than I can. But basically, like, and when I do things that light me up, it generates energy that lights other people up. Is that how you would describe it?
That's such a great way to describe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, generators, so I always say there are 4 types and a cool cousin in human design. There's a hot debate in human design on whether there's 5 types or 4 types. And we could definitely get into that. But the generator, you are literally generating life. And the biggest thing for a generator to know is that when you follow the breadcrumbs and the threads that are giving you energy, everyone in your world benefits. Everyone.
Which is like a really wild, like at first, especially with my upbringing, which was more religious, to sort of say that we're here to be on purpose for other people, which I do think we are. I mean, that's a part of our connection and our evolution, and universally, it's like we're here for one another because we live in an ecosystem together. But I actually just was saying this recently but if I'm living from the outside in, thinking about, well, how can I serve people rather than starting from the center and going, well, what's lighting me up? And then how can I use that to serve people? It doesn't serve the dual purpose that life is serving for me now, which is like, frick yeah, like this feels so good to do things that feel so good, you know? But that was such a huge unlock for me, just the one thing from human design. And that's how I started down the path of the feminine, masculine, and polarity. And it has been one thing leading to the other. And now I have mermaids everywhere. It's been 4 years and it's led me to the mermaid.
It is. It's wild, though. I mean, I think generators and manifesting generators, you're here to know thyself. That is, you are here to know yourself. You have to know what your body is telling you, what lights you up, and by lighting up, I mean, it is about what brings you joy, but sometimes you're entering into an experience that you know is going to be really freaking painful and hard, but your energy is directing you there. So I do like to caveat that it isn't always sunshine and rainbows, and your body is speaking to you.
Yes.
And you have no idea what's going to be unlocked on the other side. And you have no idea who's going to benefit and what kind of impact you're going to create the more you really trust and know and understand and love yourself. Know thyself, love thyself, right? That is the beginning piece and the foundational piece for generators and manifesting generators for sure.
Is this a good time to talk about the 4 types and the cool
cousin? Sure, yeah,
Okay,
we can break that down. Yeah. So I like to think about human design as like this, I don't know why I always use this analogy, but it's like a layer cake, right? There's all these different layers that you can unpack. And the one that is most prominent, like the frosting on the cake, is the types. And that's probably going to be the thing you see when you Google first. And so there are generators, there are manifesting generators, which they share so many qualities of the generator that originally they were one. But manifesting generators are quite unique and they carry a pretty different frequency. So I like to think of them as separate. Those two together make up about 70% of the population. So you're in really good company.
Yeah.
And then there are projectors, which are about 20% of the population. That's what I am. Manifestors, about 10% of the population. And then our rare reflectors are about 1% of the population.
Okay. So what are projectors and reflectors and
would it be helpful to just go through each type quick?
Yeah.
Okay. So generators we talked about are I call them the cosmic builders and creators. You are here to build and create beauty and art and a life that feels so satisfying to you, whatever that means for where your energy takes you. Manifesting generators, something similar, but they're more innovative. They may break the mold of things. They tend to be multi-passionate. They may move at a quicker pace and then have to come back and retrace some steps. Projectors, they're here to be the guides. They're the guides and the seers. So where the generators and the manifesting generators are really here to know thyself, projectors are here to know and see others.
Wow.
And so, I think we get into the trap of trying to understand ourselves so much where our energy really is meant to be directed outward towards other people and helping them see themselves in a new way.
Does that show up in if you were to put vocations to that, is that teacher? So
great question. I know some amazing projectors who are teachers, therapists, human design guides, astrologers. I have some amazing astrologer friends who are projectors. Really any profession where you're really helping the other unpack and see themselves.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then manifestors, there are initiators and our fire starters. They are the ones, they are powerful. And they are the ones who, when they see it, they can make it happen, right? They're the visionaries. They're the ones who are paving really new territory for us. And it's amazing to watch manifestors work. But they are quite self-contained in that, their aura is what we call, it sounds so terrible, repelling. It's meant to be a protective mechanism for them because they're taking us into new territories. They really need to be protective of whose energy they're letting in, and they're really not here to ask for permission. And just being lucky enough to be in a manifestor's presence is going to initiate you into some sort of action.
Wow. That is so cool.
Yeah, manifestors are amazing.
This is why I'm like, if you're listening to this right there, there's no way people aren't going to go Google, like, what am I?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, And I wonder if you're a manifestor and you don't, maybe you've seen this. If you're a manifestor and you don't know that you are, and you're experiencing people being do they experience people feeling repelled from them because they're protective of their nature?
Yeah, let's talk about the auras for a second, because I think this will give a good visual. So manifesting generators and generators, warm and enveloping aura. I always spread my arms really wide. You are kind of an open book in many ways. People know how you're feeling. They're picking up on that energy. Yeah. This is why when you are on fire for your life, or you're really convicted in what you're doing, it benefits everyone because we all feel it. And that is a really amazing gift that you can give to other people. Projectors, penetrating laser beam aura. When we are with someone, we see straight through to them. It's just as easy as breathing for us. That can be very vulnerable and uncomfortable for certain people. And so projectors, they need to wait to be invited in to those situations, because people have to be ready for what you have to say, and it can be really invasive if not. Manifestors, this repelling aura, it's a self-contained, really protected aura, and it is really meant to protect the magic of the manifestor. The way I have heard this then spoken about is that manifestors often say, yeah, people tell me I'm a hard read. Like they can't quite read me. They don't quite get me. They don't quite understand me. And for the manifestor, oftentimes they can't even imagine why someone would be so interested in them. But for people who are trying to read them, it can be really uncomfortable to not have clarity as to what they're seeing.
So interesting.
Yeah. So the manifestor strategy is to inform, is to just clue people in on what you're doing who might be impacted by your decisions. So there's less resistance for that manifestor to move forward. Yeah. And then reflectors, the 1%, they're really rare birds. They're amazing. And I've met a few reflectors in my life, and I usually like to tell them to tell me what their experience has been like versus what I read in a book. But they're really like, I would say the judges, or they're kind of the pulse on the environment in the community. What they do is they can read environments and people really well. And they kind of reflect back what's happening. So they're a great pulse on the health of a relationship or an environment, an organization. And they have a sampling aura. And so they kind of pop into different environments, and they can taste and try on. So they can be really malleable, but they have to be really careful of protecting their energy and prioritizing spaces and places that feel healthy to them.
Oh, this is all so interesting to me. And this is just one element.
Yes, this is like scratch the surface, top layer of the cake. Though it's a really important one to understand. And I would say human design is not something you're going to learn in a day. It's not even something you're going to learn in a season. It is a lifetime of study and experimentation. But this is a really great place to start.
How has this helped you in your life? I'm sure it integrates in all of life, but how's it showing up for you?
Yeah, I can share some tangible examples, but I'll say this without sounding super dramatic. It has changed my life.
Yeah.
It has been an absolute gift in my life, and it has put me on a totally different trajectory. I had a lot of self-hate and self-criticism. I really didn't understand myself, and I spent many years in really painful experiences because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, and then I didn't understand why I couldn't keep up, or why I was getting burnt out or sick.
So you were behaving in ways or in scenarios that were just not in alignment with how you're designed. Got it.
Absolutely. Okay. I was trying to fit into a mold that was never built for me, right? And so many of us are doing that. Finding human design was like a huge breath of fresh air. So first finding out that I was a projector, because projectors are here to work in sprints and bursts. They do not have sustainable, consistent energy. And that was the first thing I really resonated with, because I was so burnt out in all of my roles and my careers. And I had gotten myself into this cycle where I would enter a career. I would be very excited. I would contribute. I would be the hardest worker in the room. I would go 2 years, and then I would have a crash and burn moment where I got really sick, or I was tracking down to, debilitating anxiety or depression. And then I would quit. And then I would go through this moment of self-loathing, and I would pick myself back up, and I would start the cycle again.
Wow, yeah.
And so learning I was a projector really helped me understand what I needed. And And I've always been really interested in people. I went to college and was originally going to get my master's, become a therapist, a marriage counselor. And so that really helped me understand my love for understanding people and understanding others. And it really helped call out the gift of being able to see them, because I didn't see that as a gift, but it is something that I have been told. And so then being able to shift and mold my career so that that gets to be something I get to do, it's really put me on that trajectory. We haven't talked about profile yet, but profile is one of the things I resonate most with my chart. If you're looking at your chart, it looks like a fraction of two numbers. So I'm a 2-4. Finding out those qualities for me was really...
What is a 2-4?
Oh, okay. So a 2-4 is called the hermit opportunist. The 2 is somebody who really craves and needs either alone time or time to be in their flow of whatever it is they're interested in. But they're also called the natural. So they tend to be naturally gifted at the things that are correct for them. And things that are correct for them tend to come easy. But with that can come debilitating imposter syndrome. Because the things that come easy to you, you think there's something missing. Or you feel like you have to be able to explain yourself. And the 2 can't explain why it knows what it knows. And so I resonated with that very deeply, even with human design. Even 4.5 years in, sometimes I still deal with this of, do I know enough? Can I explain to somebody why I picked this up? Can I explain to somebody why I feel the way I feel about the generator or the 4-1 profile? Or and then the 4 is called the opportunist because it's really concerned with its intimate networks. So it does much better with a warm introduction. It does much better with smaller groups of people, or, I mean, you can expand your network, of course, but it's a different kind of energy, I think, than somebody who's a true extrovert out with all the people, can make conversation with anybody. And it takes really good care of the people that it's in network with, but there has to be reciprocity in that relationship. And you have this too as a 4-1. And that really helped me understand and unpack friendships, old business relationships, and just people in my life where maybe it ended painfully, or I gave a lot of myself away in the name of keeping the peace. And so just really, it was so healing for me. I could go on and on. The last thing I'll say is, as a mother, it has been very liberating. So my husband is a generator, like you, a sacral generator. And for the early parts of our parenthood journey, I couldn't understand why I just couldn't keep up. I felt like a failure. I felt like a terrible mom, that I needed more space, that it was overwhelming to me to spend so much time, even as a family unit. I really had to break away for regular periods of time, and that made me feel a lot of shame. And then, our son wasn't even 1 when we got pregnant with the twins. And so to have 3 babies under the age of 2.
Like? You're like in ultrasound?
It was, yes, it's a wild story. I knew I was pregnant. I knew it. We stopped on the way home from a trip and got a pregnancy test, and I was not happy. And I really want to say, I feel badly saying that, because I know pregnancy is so sensitive for so many people. And for me, I was sad and I was overwhelmed. And then we went in for we used midwives. And so we went in and we had the heartbeat check, and she couldn't find the heartbeats. So she scheduled an ultrasound. And so we were walking to the hospital, and my husband was joking, because he's always wanted twins. And he was joking. He said, still a chance there could be twins. And I'm like, I don't think we have a baby, like a viable pregnancy here. So stop joking about it. We get into that ultrasound room, and they put that thing on, and immediately we were like, there's 2 in there, isn't there? So anyway, that was, a really amazing experience. And it's also, that first year was very hard. And and knowing what I knew about myself by that time about human design was really healing, because I understood that it was okay that it wasn't okay. And it was okay that I couldn't keep up. And it was okay that I was more exhausted than anybody else in the room. And so I had a lot more grace and compassion for myself, for my husband, for all of our babies at that point, that I probably would have ever had I not known this.
That's so powerful. That's been a theme that's been surfacing for me, or in things that I'm reading lately, is this idea of gentleness and compassion with self.
Yeah.
And I don't know when or why. I can only speak for myself, I suppose. But I feel like I've seen this pattern in humanity, which is that we would just beat ourselves up, or like try to fit ourselves into a certain box, or shame ourselves, or allow ourselves to be shamed by other people. You should be able to handle XYZ. You should be able to do, because we assume people should be like us.
Yeah.
rather than understanding our uniqueness and then approaching it with gentleness and compassion. I don't know, that keeps surfacing for me lately, that when we see those things in ourselves, to what does it mean to actually come to ourselves with compassion as you would with a child that is struggling, hopefully. But as a mom, I had moments as a mom that I was like, snap out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Which is that was the mirror. Like,
Yes.
oh, this is how I treat myself. Snap out of it. Get buck up. Let's move on.
Yes.
And to unravel that, I mean, it's always a process. Like, we've never arrived, right? But it has also changed the way I mother, because if I can have more, it's a cycle, right? So
Yes.
now I'm doing my best to be more compassionate with their beingness, their uniqueness, their
Yes.
humanness. And that's not easy to do when we're running at a pace or trying to force ourselves into something that isn't in alignment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think I like to consider us cycle breakers, right?
Yeah.
We're really looking at things and saying there is a different way for us to do this. And at the same time, we are unraveling eons worth of stories and experiences. And so we are going to continue to screw up, and we're human. And, but these tools have been so healing and helpful. And knowing my husband's design, knowing our boys, all of our children are boys, and knowing their designs has been so helpful, because they need a level of engagement and energy that I can understand now. And I also know that I can't be the one to give that to them all the time, and that it's okay for me to step back and be an observer and let them figure it out, and that sometimes inserting myself is worse, especially knowing what I know about myself as a projector. And so it has changed the way I approach that. And it also has just allowed me to see them with so much more compassion and awe, really. Because I see so much of their designs coming through, and they're really different kids. I love this aspect of that concept, or that phrase of, two completely different kids. They were raised in the same house. Yeah. They're completely different kids. Inherently, from the moment they were born, even before their birth, right? Like, they're different kids. They need different things. And what a gift that we can give them by understanding them on a level that is so much deeper than surface.
And how cool that they get to be so close to the sun with you,
Thank you.
I've come to believe, at least right now, I'm believing that we chose to come here at the time we did, with the parents that we did. And so we were just talking as we were walking here today, that it's so interesting to me that I feel like my daughters chose me and my ex, and what they chose to come here to learn and experience. And it's a very different perspective than I grew up with, but it's causing me to feel differently about, I don't mean responsibility in the sense of like a weightiness responsibility, but like this, like, whoa, like they're close to the sun with me, with you, with the cycles that we're breaking with. And so I'm curious now, as I get to watch them move into adulthood, how it is all linked together. It's it's a really wild, versus like how when they were really little, which now my oldest is 18, so years ago, it was really the parenting paradigm was like, how can we teach them rules, fit them in a mold, have the boundaries, make sure that they say please and thank you this way. I mean, and all of that is all good, but it really was, we've got 3 daughters and they'll all fit into this mold until they show you pretty quickly, like,
The
they're
joke's
not all
on
the
you.
same.
Yes.
Exactly.
I know, it is so wild. One thing I love watching is all of my boys are generators or manifesting generators. My oldest is a manifesting generator. The twins are generators. And one thing we talk about with generator and sacral energy in general is sometimes that can manifest and come out as nonverbal sounds, like the ums and the ahs and the, the kind of guttural. Think about, those guttural noises that you're not even conscious of. And I love seeing that in my boys. And they all have their sacral sounds now. And so instead of me saying, and I still catch myself doing this, so let's, we're not perfect parents, but if I ask them a question, do you want to do this? Or do you want this yogurt? Or do you want this thing? And they give me a sound instead of a yes or no, I have now I don't ask them to say, is that a yes or no, or use your words, think about that. It's like, what a way to disconnect them from this kind of deep guttural connection. Yeah. And so learning to read their sacral sounds and their body cues more than what they're saying. That's a really kind of fun little tangible thing that we've been doing. Mm-hmm.
Remember when you said that to me when we were doing our chart reading, because that's what I am. And I was like, oh, because when I go back to edit my episodes, there are times I'm like, Jen, that was one too many. It's like I got a lot of like.
Was it though?
I don't know. But after you said that, I'm like, that is so funny, because I hear that in myself now. Every time I make a noise, I'm like, oh yeah, there it is.
And you get to really see that because you do podcasting. That's
a lot of it.
So fun. I'd really love to talk about your story just a little bit and how this kind of plays in, because I think we're on two really parallel journeys in terms of, especially down to the industry that we are coming from and the work that we're really kind of like boldly stepping into. What has that experience been like for you?
Oh, I think still, it's interesting because on the one hand, people have been reflecting back to me like, you're so courageous, and I said it earlier as we were chatting, but simultaneously, I don't always feel like it's courage, because it's just a compulsion almost. It's just like, I can't not do this. But it's been like, when I look back, it was pretty challenging. I was like talking to a woman at the gym today who randomly or not is like into all the stuff. Like, I just found this out today.
Amazing.
And I know, I'm like, this is wild. We're going to hang out. She's into astrology and whatever. But
this is fourth line stuff, by the way.
What is?
What you're just saying, like the people that kind of come into your world.
Yeah.
And you're really, as a 4-1, you're really unique. That's your profile. But fourth lines they're here to make those connections. And I never think that it's accident.
Yeah, that's
now
so
what you're really stepping into and seeking is finding you.
Oh, see this stuff. This is so like it's validating. It's good to hear. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so when however many years ago that I just started on this path of the feminine, I literally think it just like showed up in my Instagram. It was like feminine, masculine polarity. So more from an energetic relationship standpoint. And then I started to see everything through that lens, like my work, my leadership, my kids, and where the imbalances were. And that really led me down a path of starting to learn about the divine feminine. So it's all connected, right? But like, what is that? And what is the history of that? And what is the difference between that and not? And so this stuff, and then trying to bring that into the working world was like, what? But I didn't know how to not bring it in.
Yeah.
Which is kind of ironic, because I grew up very Christian. I was a worship leader prior to getting into real estate. And I learned how to not bring that in, which is wild, kind of.
Yes.
I brought myself to the table, but this was like, I couldn't stop talking about it.
Yeah.
And so I just did, but I did it in a way that was like, okay, the masculine in work shows up this way. It's linear, it's logical, it's goal oriented, and that's kind of the energetic way of looking at it. It's not necessarily the divine masculine, but if we're talking yin yang energy, and the feminine is more connected and creative and fluid and sense-based, so sensual. So what is that? Why is it important to have our environment feel a certain way? And what does that do when we incorporate that? So I was trying to bring that into the best of my ability through a business setting lens. Understandably so, it didn't at the time resonate, but there were people, men and women, that started to grasp it. And then started to use that language, or go home and use that language with their spouse, because the theme that I saw is that male and female, many of us were predominantly in our masculine, and it was showing up just like we've just talked about. It shows up everywhere when we don't understand what's happening inside of us and how it's relating to these different facets, or we're trying to fit. Like, I am a whole being. I am masculine and feminine internally. There's a union there. But if I'm trying to fit and be predominantly masculine, it's getting me out of whack, just like you were sort of out of whack because you didn't have a full maybe integration or understanding at the time.
Absolutely. I had no idea who I was or what
Yeah,
was going on, even though I thought I did.
Yeah,
Right? Like you
right.
practice yoga and mindfulness, but
Yeah.
I couldn't find any language to describe what was happening.
Yeah. It's wild then when you do. And it's also so cool how there are all these different tools and lenses that I feel, and maybe this is the 4-1 in me, like I feel like there are so many people in my world getting at the same thing from different perspectives. And really, if I could name the thing, it's coming back home to self.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. That is like my tagline. Like helping you come home to yourself is what I say to people. Yeah. I had someone say that in a testimonial a couple of years ago. And I was like, that's exactly what it is. So we're certainly on
the path.
the same wavelength there.
Yeah.
And I what I love about what you just said, and as I think about you, so what I love about what you just said is there's so many paths you could take. And I think for any of us who have grown up in a religious household or in a religious setting, you know, we are told that this is the way.
Yeah.
And I think what collectively we're starting to experience is that maybe there are many different ways.
Yeah.
We're all seeking God, and we're seeking source, and we're seeking spirit, and we're seeking something greater within ourselves. And I mean, I think about you as a 4-1. So the 4-1 profile is very unique and very rare. And you as a 4-1 are really the one you're like laying the tracks for other people to then follow. And to me, it seems like you've always been on a bit of this spiritual journey.
Yeah.
And it's always been a piece of you. And it has just evolved and grown and expanded as you've grown and expanded so that you can continue to pave this path for other people then to walk.
Yeah, thank you for that reflection. It's kind of wild to look back because I think it wasn't until, it was probably 6-8 months ago, I was talking to one of my girlfriends and I was like, oh shit. It's like all of this is leading me back to some form of spirituality because when I was deconstructing my faith, when I was deconstructing my beliefs, like it didn't totally happen on purpose, but then eventually it was. I just decided to dive into what I call as the dark. And I had never even heard at the time the dark night of the soul and the heroine's journey and all of that. It is always a part of transmutation. It is always a part of transformation, is to go into what feels like a dark place. Yes. But there was this dark period in my life that looking back was pretty dark. And it was where I mean, it is the chrysalis. It's where you become mush.
Yes.
But you don't lose your DNA, but you become mush.
Yes.
And then you start to transform into something new and come out and go, oh my gosh. And I remember it was when I launched my blog. So I don't know. I'm not doing anything with my blog anymore, but the blog was a part of that process of becoming and discovering who I was. Yeah. And the night before I launched it, was it on my 40th birthday? It might have been. It was on my birthday. I drank wine and cried, like really was like, I'm coming out, like I'm coming out. And it felt like a birth. It felt like a thing. But to come back to your question of like, what is this process like? And your point of going where the energy takes you, there was a lot of pain in that process and a lot of shedding and a lot of grief and a lot of confusion when you decide to like open up to ask the tough questions. When you've never done that, that's pretty scary.
Yes. I think this is what sometimes the Instagram posts of the world miss. You'll read for the generators, for example, right? To follow your passion or follow what lights you up. But, you know, you got to know that this healing journey, whether it's human design or whatever system or you know, process resonates with you, healing can be really hard and ugly and painful at times. And there's always something on the other side. Yeah. And I think systems like this give us some bravery to face it. Yeah. And to help us say, I'm going to move through this. And it's like that Anais Nin quote the pain of staying the same is worse than the pain of the change.
Letting go, like holding tight in the bud is worse than like letting go and moving forward. I was just thinking about that before you said
I know
it.
I butchered that quote, but I hope you understand.
That's like on the front page of my blog because it became, I don't even know how I stumbled into that quote, and I still have on my list to get her books. Do you have her books?
No, I don't have any of her books.
We need to get her books. but that was one that I literally had in a notebook that I read every day as I was walking through the process, because I did reach, I reached that point of like, it is way too painful to hang on to this version of me. And it's scary to go here, but this feels more painful. So what are my choices?
Yeah.
And then you move in that direction and start. I think anytime we step into something that is more in alignment, you feel it. Even if it's painful, you feel like I'm in the flow now, like I'm in the river instead of swimming upstream or being in the resistance. Even if it is hard and it's painful, it feels like, okay, I'm moving in the right direction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and if I think about your chart, so you are a sacral generator. You have so much openness. You and I both share that. We have 7 of our 9 centers. So if you're looking at if you pull your chart, that's called the body graph. There are 9 shapes you're going to see. Those are called the energy centers. And some of them can be fully colored in. Some of them are not colored in at all. You and I both have 7 of those 9 centers undefined, which means we receive a whole lot from our environment and people. And I think part of this process is really emptying those centers out and unpacking what beliefs have I adopted, what assumptions have I adopted, what identities have I adopted that aren't actually mine. Right? And so this is where this shedding is painful sometimes, but you have 2 centers defined, your sacral, which is the square kind of second to the bottom, and your spleen, which is the triangle on the left side. And those are your only 2 defined, and they're defined through the channel 3457. And the 3457 is the art of survival. And it is like, sacral is life force energy, spleen is instinct, intuition, health, immune system. It was probably to the point where it was detrimental to your health to continue on the path that you were doing because the actions were so out of alignment.
Yeah, it was.
And you just had to really trust in your body and your soul in that moment and say, none of this is logical. Cry. I know, I have goosebumps telling you this. You had to trust in what you couldn't understand. You had to. And it was like you got to that point where body just spoke and started to direct you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. This is so powerful. It makes, I mean, looking back and thinking about that time, like it didn't make sense. My decisions weren't making logical sense, but my body was speaking and my intuition was screaming and I couldn't not. And I feel that now, I mean, now I think because I'm more in tune with that too, I feel that I can't not do this. I feel that a lot more now.
Yeah.
In some small ways too. Like it's really, I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but what I'm eating right now, I go to the store and I feel like I'm more in tune with what my body wants. And I'm like, I can't not eat 3 peaches today. It's just like an interesting thing that's happening.
Well, so with sacral and spleen connected, I always call that a supercharged intuition. And it's both of those operate in the moment. Right? Spleen is that kind of quiet intuition, very logical, turn left instead of right, don't eat that, don't touch that. Sacral is that kind of guttural gut feeling. So those 2 are now operating. And I think what you have done over these past however many years you've been unpacking this is you've really started to deepen that connection with those pieces of you that have always been there, that have always wanted to speak with you, but maybe you couldn't hear it. And so going to the grocery store and saying, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to get today, but I'm letting sacral and spleen kind of guide me through this grocery store. And I don't know why I need to buy 5 peaches, but I'm going to buy 5 peaches today and I'm going to enjoy them. And there's so much surrender in your life in general, especially for all of us, but especially for generators and manifesting generators. But for you, I mean, this is a surrendered experience.
It is.
And so as simple as going to the grocery store. Yeah. And the one other thing I want to say about this for you is as a 4/1, when we look at the profile, and again, I've gone kind of deep in profile without explaining it, but profile is like a costume. It flavors our whole experience. And you can have up to 12 different profiles, and they're all a combination of the numbers 1 through 6. We look at the 1 and we look at the 4, which is what you have both of, as foundations. 4 is foundations in relationship. 1 is like food, shelter, water, safety, survival. And what you have done over these last few years is completely break down your foundations in so many aspects.
I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, it's okay if you do. We cry a lot in sessions. And so that even more so than anybody else going through what you've gone through, the level of discomfort and even like fear of survival in your body that you probably experienced is even tenfold because of your 4-1 profile. And the bravery that you showed by continuing forward on your path, because you knew you didn't know where you needed to go, but you knew you needed to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And you kept following those breadcrumbs. What you have done now is you've brick by brick, you've started to rebuild the foundation with which you'll stand on and help other people stand on.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm going through another version of that right now. Like I was just sharing yesterday on my Instagram, like everything has, my job has changed, my living situation, my cars, my kids graduating, like I feel it's such an irony because I do feel really centered. I feel like I have such a strong knowing, but my physical environment and everything in it has shifted. And so it's been a new challenge. And also I've been reflecting on the open channel piece because I've been also working to like, in the feminine is open, it's receptive, right? But then seeing that I have all these open channels. The other day I was reading a book actually, and she was talking about how we can be like eggs that have shells that are porous, where we let in what we need and we let out what we need. And so I've just been sort of asking the universe, like, okay, I'm so open. How can I be open to what I need to be open to and not what I don't? Do you have answers to that?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And with someone with so much openness, I think about this a lot.
Yeah.
I call these practices emptying out practices, and I really prioritize those now. Anything from a walk in nature, restorative yoga, breath work, a journaling, like a journal dump, a good cry, sauna, cold plunge, like you name it. Anything that's going to help you kind of clean and clear out, Reiki or acupuncture, so healing if that's something that you're interested in. That really clears out those centers and all of the extra spaces that you have open.
Yeah.
I think sometimes our undefined centers can get a bad rap, but they're actually some of the most beautiful places on the chart. A lot of our superpowers can live there because it's where we harness so much wisdom. Because we've had to move through situations and take things in and understand what's healthy for us or not healthy, and then clear that out. And now we have a really good perspective of what's out there. And so there's a lot of beauty in the openness too. And so prioritizing the alone time and the space to clear that out on the regular, it's really helpful.
Okay. That explains my nature craving, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Get out in nature. Yeah. And I think like you and I both have an undefined solar plexus, for example. And the solar plexus is the seat of emotions and emotional experiences. And half the population has it defined. So we are inevitably in the company of people with defined solar plexus on the regular. And that means we're taking in and amplifying everyone else's emotions, right? So we talk about the concept of empathy. When I look at empathy, I think about people with undefined solar plexus, because you're literally taking in and feeling and amplifying that emotion of someone else. And so starting to notice and become aware, this anger or this overwhelm, I don't think it's actually mine. So can I let that go?
Is it when you're in the physical presence of somebody that you can feel their energy then?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you also, human design has roots in astrology. And so the transits are always playing a role in this too, where the sun and the earth and the planets are. They may define us emotionally. So you may be going through a season where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so emotional. Like I can't get my emotions are
You mean
so
that's not
high
every
and low.
day?
Yeah, certainly can be. But there was a period of time recently where my solar plexus was defined and I was feeling things on such a visceral, different level. And when I went and pulled my chart with the transits, I thought, okay, there it is. It's my solar plexus is defined. So I'm going to allow myself to move through these emotions, but I'm not going to tie myself to them. I'm not going to hold and cling to them.
That is so good.
Yeah. Same with, I love talking about the ajna, the undefined ajna. It's the second triangle down from the top. Ajna is where we conceptualize and make sense of things. It's an information processing center. And in that space, when it's undefined especially, we may have opinions that change. We may not know what we think about something. We may feel really strongly about opinions when we're with someone, and then we leave them and we don't feel as strongly. And so I've really tried to loosen my grip on assuming things are truth with a capital T, and clinging to my opinions, knowing that it's okay for me to be convicted in what I believe in, but also knowing that that may shift and mold and change over time as I have new information and experiences, and that I can really be open to other people's perspectives without taking them in as my own.
That's so good. I mean, all of this is so insightful. Just even obviously thinking about myself here, right?
Of course, as you should.
But like, oh, okay, I'm interviewing different people on the podcast. I'm being enlightened by different perspectives. I'm the one is a learner too,
Yes.
right?
Oh, yes.
So I'm just like, it's kind of insatiable. It's really wild right now. Like to the point where I'm like, Jen, stop. Just like stop. Because I have 5 books going at once and podcasts going. But to know that I can take that all in and not take it on as my own. And I think similarly with the open, like being the emotions, like not attaching myself or my identity to those things. And I don't know if that's true for people with closed centers on those areas too.
Yeah. So let's go back to the ajna because it's an easy one to grasp. So my husband has a defined ajna. I don't. And he has stronger and more kind of prominent opinions, I would say, on just about everything. And this was a point of contention early in our relationship because he would expect me to match his level of opinionated, whatever it is, his opinions, his beliefs. He would expect me to be able to match him there, even if we didn't agree. He, like if we were debating. And I couldn't. Because I could see his perspective, but I could see somebody else's perspective. And I had a really hard time articulating that. And that was a point of contention until we understood what was going on.
Wow.
He defined ajna as, you're really stubborn by nature. And I say that with a lot of love. You're not necessarily here to have your mind changed. And so for us, that's been a great release. Okay, I don't need to try to force to change your mind. You may or may not change mine, and we're good. We're cool. We can coexist.
How cool.
You know, or someone with a defined identity center, you usually know who they are. There's just something about them that's so solid. They have just a strong kind of sense of self. I would say they're a bit less of a chameleon, though they can go through massive shifts and changes in their life. So don't get me wrong. And they're really, the identity center, which is the diamond right in the middle of the chart, that exudes love and worthiness. And so maybe they have a more solid sense of self, or they understand, even if they're going through a tough time, that they're worthy of love. And those of us with an undefined identity center are really on a journey sometimes, because we could be chameleons. We can hook into identities or systems or places that are not healthy for us at all, but we adopt them as our own. We can question whether we're worthy of love or acceptance. We can be really confused about our direction in life. A lot of direction is a big theme of that. So it's totally different experience.
It's so much. This is so powerful for people, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Powerful for you, powerful for your family, and anybody that dives into it. I imagine people listening, you're going to get inundated, I think, with information. Okay.
Please do.
Is there anything else that's been on your heart or mind, whether it's human design or not, that we haven't talked about today?
Great question. I want to say one thing about human design, and that it's not a belief system. So if anybody is hesitant about exploring it or diving into it, the founder himself, said, this is not a belief system. This is an experiment. You go out and you make your own meaning. So I want to say that about that. I also want to say, if you're just starting your human design journey and you're feeling overwhelmed, that's a very natural place to be. And it's like learning a new language. So take your time, start small, play with it. If it resonates, then you can slowly kind of keep going and keep uncovering. But it doesn't matter whether it's human design or another system. Prioritizing practices that bring you closer to yourself and bring you closer to a sense of self-awareness and self-empowerment, connection with God or source or whatever it is that you believe in. I think that's one of the most powerful things we can be doing right now as individuals. And if we can start to change that individually, imagine what we can do on a broader scale. And I'm really passionate about that. So I don't care what system it is. Go find it. If it brings you closer to yourself, make space in your day for it.
Yeah. Okay, so if people, they're gonna be curious, they're wanting to get a hold of
Sure.
you. What? Tell us about your work and what you offer and how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah. So I'm mostly on Instagram at Maggie Hilpisch. That's my website as well, maggiehilpisch.com. Right now I offer one-on-one sessions. I also do work for teams. So if you're working for an organization or a corporation, I've done plenty of work between workshops, one-on-one sessions, or team sessions. And I'm also launching a program in the fall. So you can find all that info on my website or on Instagram.
Okay, and we'll put that all in the show notes.
Yeah.
Thank you for your bravery, and for following what's in you that is begging to be birthed, and that you're doing it. You've done it. You're a living example for so many people that are like, I'm feeling called to explore this thing, and how do I integrate that in my current work and my family and I'm seeing it everywhere, and it's hard. It is really challenging to take those steps. So I just want to celebrate you and that you've done that and how it's impacting so many people's lives.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
But I would echo that right back to you.
But maybe most importantly, that it's your life that is unfolding as it is designed to, and that's beautiful. So
Thank you so much. Yeah. And right back at you. I want to recognize your bravery and your openness and the fact that your path has really unfolded the way it has, and to take a step outside of a role like you were in a career that you were in, and embrace this, especially as a mom, especially, in this next phase of your life. Like it's really powerful, and you have no idea how many people you're going to impact. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
So fun. Thank you so much.